This program is proudly brought to you by ComCopy, the duplicating specialists. Welcome to In Between the Sprockets, your weekly diet of film reviews with a bent edge. I'm Madeleine Swain.
And I'm Spiro Economopoulos.
On tonight's show we're going to be looking at the new film Butterfly Kiss and talking to its director Michael Winterbottom. We'll also be looking at Kevin Costner's gamble Waterworld, which apparently left his marriage in tatters and was responsible for Matsushita selling off Universal to Canadian distiller Seagram.
And we'll also be looking at Stockard Channing's Academy Award nominated performance in 6 Degrees of Separation. And our video review is Liz Taylor's Cleopatra.
Oh, poor Liz.
I know, number 8.
So sad. Keep going. But first up, Butterfly Kiss.
Look who it is.
Can I help you at all?
No. Don't mind. I was looking for a record, you might know it.
We carry tapes, we don't have records as such.
This one was about love, you know. I just can't remember what it's called.
All we've got are over there.
Definitely to do with love. I can't remember who sang it.
We've classic love songs and we've songs of love. You'll find them both there.
Well, you must know us. It's got a piano that goes da-da, da-da, da-da. It's well known. I wasn't the only one that liked it.
I don't really know much about music. We're mainly petrol, you see.
Oh, well, you can only do your best, can't you?
Yeah, that's right.
You're Judith, aren't you?
Me? No, I'm Wendy.
Oh, come on, you're Judith.
No, I'm not.
If you don't want to know, just say so.
I don't even know any Judiths. Wendy. See?
Michael Winterbottom's cinematic debut Butterfly Kiss tells the tale of loose cannon Eunice, played by Amanda Plummer, and Miriam, played by Saskia Reeves, a repressed and naive woman whose life consists of mindless work at a service station and looking after her invalid mother.
Now Eunice has a great quest, which is to find her lost love Judith, and this she does by bailing up everybody she meets and asking them whether they're Judith or not. Very bizarre. In this manner she meets Miriam in the service station, and this meeting marks the genesis of their relationship.
Yes, now Amanda Plummer's manic performance permeates the entire film. She's no shrinking violet, in fact she's a sociopath, and her world is peopled with religious recriminations, murder and evangelical outpourings. Now this starts to have quite a strong effect on impressionable Miriam.
I've been driving for over 30 years, and you know what? I love the open road now more than I ever did. I love it. But there she is. There's my little beaut.
Oh, it's a big one. I love a man with a big one. Don't you, me? Aye, we could take turns.
Yeah?
She could go first. Go on, you go first, mate. How do you mean? You get in the cab with Robert. Go on. I want you to.
Not if she doesn't want to.
She'll do it, I'll tell her to. Won't you, me?
You know I will.
Go on, then. Lovebird.
As Eunice overwhelms and dominates Miriam, Miriam becomes a willing acolyte and by default an accomplice in a series of murders. Now Eunice's victims tend to either be sexual liaisons or people who have come to her aid.
Bad did it help her, I think, actually.
I think so too. Saskia Reeves gives an excellent performance as Miriam. Her role is much less showy and histrionic, but she manages to hold her own against Amanda Plummer's charismatic Eunice.
Yes, I think the strength of the film's performances is a tribute to Butterfly Kiss's clever juxtaposition and eventual blurring of the psychotic and shamanistic Eunice and the daddy naivety of Miriam.
And the two women join up to try and find Judith. Now, we've always said that you can't make a road movie in England because if you drive for 4 hours, you hit the coast. But this film manages to circumvent that quite cleverly by just having the people drive around in circles. So what you end up with is a cross between Thelma and Louise and Heavenly Creatures, but without the visual aesthetics of either of those two films. In fact, this is no Merchant Ivory. It's pretty bleak. It's pretty grey. This is the north of England.
Give us a kiss. You pretty little thing. Go on. Oh, come on. Come on, girl. Sneak out of this party. It's getting boring. There's more to life than this. It's still early morning. We could go down to the harbor and jump between the boats and see the sun come up.
Well, it's quite a difficult story. It's quite a hard story, and the locations were also very difficult to work in. It was all filmed on the side of motorways and service stations, petrol stations. So the places that are quite ugly, very noisy, but very sort of quite aggressive places, really. And I guess that was, so the filming was hard. It was a very small crew, quite low budget, and it was very much, we were sort of experiencing the same sort of thing that Eunice and Miriam were doing, really. We were travelling up and down the motorways trying to find these places, and it was a difficult shoot.
And do you worry about there being negative feedback about this being another film about lesbian serial killers?
Well, I mean, when we first wrote the story, there haven't really been any films about Miriam killers or whatever. And I know that since then, I haven't seen Fun, but Fun's been out, Heavenly Creatures has been out, and so on. I mean, the reason we wrote it about two women was we wanted people to be the same sex, because the part of the story really is that Miriam and Eunice are as opposite as possible to be. But gradually through the film, Miriam starts to have by the end of the film, Miriam has really done all the things that Eunice had at the beginning of the film. In some way, Miriam, it's not that she becomes Eunice, but she's actually done all the things that Eunice has done. So it seemed like that whole sort of identity thing was like better if they were, the same sex around being a man and woman together. And the other side of it though is that when we wrote the story, when we showed it to the actors for it, everyone was incredibly keen to do it, because these were parts that even if there have been 3 or 4 films with women like this in it, on the whole there are not many parts in films which are leading parts for women, which are sort of strong parts for women. So we found from the actors' point of view that they were all desperate to do it, because it was unusual to get that sort of script for them. So I think it depends whether you're taking a very sort of particular line there, about there've been sort of 2 or 3 films like this in a while, so many, or when you take it in the overall context of how many films there are about with men as leads and women just sort of hanging around in the periphery.
And you said I wouldn't get turban. Who says you will? I'll be a victim. A sacrificial victim. Sacrificial victims always go to heaven. That's the point of them. They're like presents to God. What's that? That's an angel's kiss. How do you know? Mother told me. Angels don't kiss at all. Of course they do. How can it be heaven if nobody kisses? Butterflies. I'd do kisses like that. Butterflies are called butterfly kisses. Butterflies definitely don't kiss.
Yes, like we said before, the film is quite bleak. It basically consists around a lot of truck stop diners.
No, it's England, so it's lorries.
Lorries, yes. Cafes and really greasy motels, so it's quite bleak. But there is an undercurrent of sly humour running through it, and the two central performances are quite colourful, to say the least. And I think it's quite clever how this drabness does translate quite well into what Miriam's world would possibly look like, I think. I like that. So, Madeleine, what are you going to give it?
I give it an 8, Spiro. I enjoyed the film very much. I found it very funny, unexpectedly so. But in a way, for me, it works almost in spite of itself. Writer Frank Cottrell Boyce and director Michael Winterbottom don't really know a great deal about female sexuality. In fact, Winterbottom has said that he doesn't think of it as a lesbian serial killer film because they're not really lesbians after all. You know, usual thing. Miriam can't be a lesbian because she's never had a physical relationship with somebody before. Not sure about that one, Michael, but the screenplay and the fabulous performances transcends all that. But what's really riveting for me is the double theme of redemption and punishment. I love all that sort of Catholic stuff. I should have been a Catholic. But I'm not quite so sure about the violence. Some of it was a little bit graphic. I'm not that fond of gore.
Yeah, well, I like my gore in its place, I suppose. And
you would.
like you, I have to admit that I also really like the themes in the film and how they're explored. If I have to make any complaints about the movie, is that the bleakness and the tone does smother some of the humour sometimes, but it's easily compensated by the two fantastic performances by the two women, and in fact their relationship in the film is ultimately quite moving, don't you think?
Oh yes,
definitely. So so I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10.
Coming up next, it's bigger and it's better and it's showier than the Olympic synchronised swimming team.
It's Waterworld.
Oh, I thought it was Splash.
No.
Oh, Waterworld. Jean Triplehorn, who we last saw in The Firm and Basic Instinct, describes Waterworld as Cecil B. DeMille. And Jean is right, this is big stuff. Now, incidentally, do you know, Spiro, what the B stands for in Cecil B. DeMille?
Actually, no, I don't. What does it stand for?
Blount. Blount. There's one for you trivial pursuitists out there. Now, I have to say that I was pleasantly surprised by Waterworld. It's certainly much better than Kevin Reynolds' last collaboration with Costner, Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves.
Guided Wannabe, and it was such an awful film, and that shocking song from it by Bryan Adams. Ugh. But anyway, back to the film. Like you, I was quite surprised with Waterworld as well, which is much better than a lot of the negative hype that's been surrounding the film.
The journos have really gone to town on this, haven't they? They've been like vultures feasting on the carrion.
Now, Waterworld's themes are quite similar to the post-apocalyptic world of the Mad Max movies, and in this film, Kevin Costner plays a man called the Mariner, who inhabits a world where the polar ice caps have melted and the quest for dry land has become one of paramount importance.
Now, his chief adversary is played by Dennis Hopper. He's a character called the Deacon, and he attempts to thwart the Mariner at every turn.
Citizens of the good ship, please now hear me speak. Dry land is not just our destination, but it is our destiny! And behold, it's time! The instrument of our salvation! Our guide in the wild! Our beacon in the dark! Turn around. She has shown me the path!
Thinning hair aside, Kevin Costner is surprisingly good in this role. He has some great physical stunts, and he wisely avoids any of those Schwarzenegger-ish witty riposte to Dennis Hopper. I always think it's really good to see a man who knows his acting limitations.
Yes, I agree. In fact, I think his usual wooden performance suits this role, which has Costner playing a character that is half warm-blooded human and half cold-blooded fish. And also a special mention must go to Dennis Hopper, who I quite liked in this film as well. He's got the stock villain performance in this, the best one-liners and all that kind of stuff. But I think he shows an amazing amount of restraint in this film, considering some of his previous over-the-top performances, like that one.
I really like the way the Dennis Hopper character was so quirky and really subversive, especially that scene where he tries to make the kids smoke. I like that. And talking of the kids, she's played by Tina Majorina, who was last seen in Andre, Karina, and When a Man Loves a Woman, and she's really good. She's not too cutesy, thankfully. But on the downside, even though Kirstie Alley has been a very strong contender for the good old Dog of the Year acting award in Village of the Damned, she gets some really stiff competition from Jean Triplehorn in this film, I'm afraid. Now, Jean Triplehorn seems to have two acting modes, pout or grimace, and often both at the same time. She does them all the way through this movie. I hated her in Basic Instinct. I wanted to slap her, and I hated her in this. But I suppose at least it's nice to know that she's consistent.
Yes, well, like we said before, we both agree that Waterworld is much better than what we expected. So I'm going to give it a 6.5 out of 10 for that. And, the plot is a little bit on the thin side, and it does sort of, there's no real surprises in it. But it is surprisingly darker for a big-budget Hollywood movie. But the love interest is kind of unconvincing.
Yes, thanks, Jean.
Well, I think fans of big action movies are going to love this film because there's some really great stunts and special effects, and Dennis Hopper is great in this movie. But I think a lot of the hype surrounding the budget of the film, I have to say that you don't really see the 200 million up on the screen there.
Oh, no, you certainly don't. But it's a good example of its genre. I really love the action sequences, and the Mary Whitehouse in me, where's she hiding? Oh, there she is. Was relieved to see that the obligatory sex scene was rather quickly scootled across. The camera spirals out of the way. Perhaps Jean was having one of her headaches after I'd slapped her, I expect. We're in complete agreement on this one.
Yeah.
I give it a 6.5 as well.
Okay, now coming up next, Fred Skepsi's 6 Degrees of Separation.
I read somewhere that everybody on this planet is separated by only 6 other people. 6 degrees of separation between us and everyone else on this planet. The President of the United States, a gondolier in Venice, just fill in the names. I find that extremely comforting that we're so close, but I also find it like Chinese water torture that we're so close because you have to find the right 6 people to make the connection. It's not just big names, it's anyone. A native in a rainforest, a Tierra del Fuego, and an Eskimo. I am bound, you are bound, to everyone on this planet by a trail of 6 people.
Donald Sutherland and the wonderful Stockard Channing star as Flannan Weezer Kittredge, a well-to-do Fifth Avenue art dealer and his wife. Now, they're visited by Paul, who claims to be a friend of their children, and also the son of Sidney Poitier. Now, being the wealthy white liberals that they are, they believe his story about being mugged and locked out of his hotel and welcome him into their home with open arms.
Yes, but they soon learn that Paul is actually an imposter, and he's used that same old line on a lot of the other Kittredge's social circle. But once Paul infiltrates their lives, he's a hard person to shake off. Yeah.
There are many, many fine points about this superbly crafted film, not least of which is the cast, which is excellent, both starring and supporting. It comes from a fine screenplay by John Gare, which he's adapted from his original play in 1990 with the same title. And Fred Skepsi's done a great job on direction. It's a very cinematic film, but it never loses touch with the original play.
Yes, I agree with you on that. It's fantastic. I think the performances alone are worth the price of admission for this film. Stockard Channing is excellent in a central performance which could potentially have been quite a caricature, but she adds a lot of depth and warmth to the part. Will Smith is also excellent in a quite convincing gay man, even though he wouldn't have an on-screen kiss with Anthony Michael Hall. Very controversial, yes.
Well, the story is that Denzel Washington, of all people, advised him against kissing another man on screen because he would never work again. And Denzel said this to him when he was actually working on Philadelphia. Think about that, Denzel. But on the other hand, Wesley Snipes told him that if he couldn't handle it, he should go back to drama school. Thumbs up for Wesley.
Yeah.
This nitwit Chapman, who shot John Lennon, said he did it because he wanted to draw the attention of the world to Catcher in the Rye. And the reading of this book would be his defense. Young Hinckley, the whiz kid who shot Reagan and his press secretary, said if you want my defense, all you have to do is read Catcher in the Rye.
I haven't read it in years.
Well, I borrowed a copy from a young friend of mine because I wanted to see what she had underlined. And I read this book to find out why this touching, beautiful, sensitive story published in July 1951 had turned into this manifesto of hate. I started reading. It's exactly as I remembered. Everybody's a phony.
The cast really is a huge plus for this film. People like Mary Beth Hart, Richard Masur, Ian McKellen, they're all quality performers. I thought Will Smith did a pretty good job in his first major film role. Donald Sutherland's artistry and experience really shines through. Any lesser performer would have been blasted off the screen by the tour de force that Stockard Channing gives us. She's played Louisa on Broadway and in London. She really knows this character inside out, and I think her Academy Award nomination was very well deserved.
Definitely was deserved. And I think it's great to see that after such disappointments like IQ and Mr. Baseball, Fred Skepsey has returned with such a fantastic movie. I think it's definitely one of the better films he's made in a long time.
I'm not sure about IQ. It had Meg Ryan in it.
Maybe you're biased.
Yes, but maybe we could put the Russia House in there instead, because that wasn't so great. 6 Degrees of Separation isn't really a film you could slot into any genre particularly, unless you sort of think about those comedy of manners films like Walt Stillman's Metropolitan, or perhaps some Woody Allen films. The children are pretty two-dimensional and seem to be played purely for comic effect.
And none of you know this fellow. He has this wild quality, yet a real elegance, and a real concern, and a real consideration.
Well, Mom, you should have let him stay. You should have divorced all your children and just let this dreamboat stay. Plus, he sent you flowers.
And jam.
Ooh. If only we could just get in touch with his father.
Who knows Sidney Poitier? We could just call him up and ask him.
I have a friend who does theatrical law. I bet he could...
What friend?
It's nobody.
I want to know.
Nobody.
Oh.
Nobody, nobody.
Look, whatever is going on anywhere, I do not want to know.
Dad,
Please. Argument. Please. I cannot leave the house. It's got nothing to do with you, Ben.
Yes, when you see your little sister, don't tell her that Paul and the hustler used her bed.
You put him in that bed. I'm not getting involved in any conspiracy.
It's not a conspiracy! LOL, it's a family.
Now, one of the things that comes through in this film is where does your moral responsibility lie in terms of helping out a person? Where does it begin and where does it end?
Very profound, very deep.
Very
What's
deep.
your rating for this film, Spiro?
Well, I have to say, I was totally satisfied with this film. I'm going to give it a 10 out of 10. Yes, 10 out of 10. The performances all through, especially Stockard Channing, were fantastic, and I really loved the dialogue. It was so brilliant, and it's just funny throughout. Like, I laughed quite a bit in this film. So.
We both chuckled a great deal. I give it a 9 because I thought it was marvellous too. I love the editing. It's very, very precise. Cuts beautifully between all the locations. In fact, it works as a real hymn to New York in the way that Woody Allen often does. It's also beautifully reflective of the artistic world that the characters inhabit. Even the opening titles are artistic in this film. It's an absolute treasure. Do go and see it.
Yes, and also, I don't know if you know this, but I've heard that this might be based on fact. Have you heard anything about this?
I have heard that, but the film makes no mention of it, so it doesn't really matter.
No.
It stands on its own. It's a terrific movie. But now, coming up, as we're feeling so kindly towards old Kevin Costner, we thought for our video review this week, we would show you part of that other great financial folly of cinema history. No, not Heaven's Gate, but the 60s one, the Cleopatra version with Liz Taylor, Richard Burton and Rex Harrison. So get out your Nefertiti eyes.
Oh, Madeleine, I missed you in Egypt, I must say. Had a great time, except for that night I got locked in the Queen's chamber, but that's another story. Which brings us to tonight's camp classic, the 1963 Cleopatra starring Liz Taylor. Although Kevin Costner's sopping mega-turkey Waterworld claims to be the most expensive movie ever made, you have to remember that these figures are in today's dollars, where tickets cost more, the dollar's worth less, and you get much less on the screen than you did 10 or 20 years ago. In fact, 30 years ago, $60 million was equivalent to well over $200 million. And that's what tonight's super colossal camp classic cost. What can you say about a film which caused an international scandal, the firing of its company president, its producer, 3 directors, a slew of scriptwriters, and nearly drove 20th Century Fox bankrupt? Nothing, but it's the most fabulous movie ever made. Come on, let's have a look.
An intruder. A man. Oh, it's you.
You wanted to see me?
I summoned you yesterday to an audience in my throne room. I was told I was not permitted to go there.
For one thing, it's too close to the quarters occupied by your brother, Patinus, Theodotus, and the rest.
I will not be told where I can go and where I cannot go.
Since it's obviously nothing that you want of me.
Except my throne.
Fresh from her sultry sign in Butterfield 8, Liz Taylor has never been more gorgeous as the most infamous child queen of Egypt. So what if she changes her costume more than Adina? Posing as a voluptuous vamp, her Cleopatra is the definitive Las Vegas showgirl, a la 44 BC. And unlike Waterworld, all the money is lusciously lavished on the screen. The luxury that pervades the screen reveals ancient Rome in all its majestic splendor. Rex Harrison plays Julius Caesar, and Richard Burton plays Mark Antony. But it's the super colossus opulence that leaves you breathless. Director Joseph Mankiewicz created a stunning achievement considering the turbulence surrounding the shoot. The film covers 18 years leading to the foundations of the Roman Empire, and it opens with a hysterical scene where Cleopatra is unrolled in a carpet on the feet of Rex Harrison. Then the film sweeps through another 3 hours of vistas until the melodramatic end, where Cleopatra kills herself in a scene that takes longer than Camille.
The taste of these, they say, is sharp, swiftly over. How strangely awake I feel, as if living had been just a long dream. Someone else's dream. Now finished at last. But that now will begin a dream of my own.
Okay, that's about wraps it up for tonight. Thanks very much for watching. Good night. I'm Madeleine Swain.
And I'm Spiro Economopoulos. Good night.